Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm joined by members of my team, and we just concluded our meeting with the Council of the District of Columbia, where we provided a briefing on the Gallery Place China Task Force and public safety trends, in particular in the Chinatown area, and had a discussion about the district's public safety ecosystem and our great desire that the council passes Brooke Pinto's Omnibus Secure DC. I can take a couple of questions. We previously briefed out on the crimes committed in the District of Columbia. We expect our partners in Maryland to provide a briefing as well. So we'll talk about the agenda for this meeting. Yes?
Okay, just a couple of questions. Thanks for doing this.
Sure.
On the first half, on the downtown and Chinatown, I'm wondering if you could speak to the role that Chinese Americans or Chinese businesses, Chinese Americans would play in the development of that vision, given the history and the culture there. I haven't really heard that spoken to this
Well, for sure. At least one member of our steering committee represents the Chinese Benevolent Association, which is a convener in Chinatown for many decades, including working with Chinese American businesses and cultural events, including the annual Lunar New Year celebration, which is upcoming. But I'm not sure which of the work streams that she is working on in particular, but she's a member of the steering committee that will present the overall vision for this area.
Okay, thank you. And then on crime, with the vote on the Secure DC Omnibus coming up, I'm wondering if you could respond to the study that the Council on the Racial Equity put out that questioned the effectiveness of preventing crime that many of the provisions would have, but worried about the racial impact that increasing length of sentences or creating new crimes would have. And I'm wondering if you're concerned about that and what your response is.
I haven't reviewed that study, so I can't comment on it in specific. I may turn to the deputy mayor, who I'm not sure has had the opportunity to see their report yet. But I'll say this. We're focused on people who are committing crimes no matter what color they are. And especially as it relates to the provisions that were in our Act Now bill that relate to emerging trends, including use of ski masks and robberies and other crimes, retail theft, which is having a huge impact on communities and retailers and the ability of communities to have access to the goods that they need, to drug-free zones, where we've seen in some places in the city open-air drug use and sale. So we have to be able to address those trends. But I do want to kind of emphasize one point, and that's just on guns and how we treat guns in the city. And when we look to other jurisdictions who are seeing decreases in violent crime and homicide, they have a very different posture when it comes to guns. When you get caught with a gun, there are immediate and swift consequences, and they're real consequences. And so we're very focused on serious crimes in our city and people who are committing serious crimes in our city. Yes, ma'am.
I had a couple of questions. My first question is, do you have any plans or intention of including any current DC residents in the steering committee? And if not, why not?
We have DC residents on the steering committee. Are you asking, are we?
In the area, in the Chinatown Gallery Place, there's no Chinatown Gallery Place resident on the.
Oh, I got it. So I think that the way that we should view the task force is there will be a smaller steering committee that are represented of a lot of different stakeholders, and each of the subgroups that were described earlier will also have members that can participate.
How does one find out about the composition of the subgroups, and how does one find out about their meeting schedule?
We'll post that information.
Given the fact that you announced this a couple of weeks ago with great fanfare, and this is obviously a priority of your administration, can you tell me why there's no information posted on the website of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development regarding the task force?
Nina, do you want to say how we're going to update that?
So this is really just about where we are in the process. We do have a website, downtown.dc.gov, where we're posting information. Right now, what we're doing is fielding a lot of information and getting data collection so that then we can have a plan and post meetings and have agendas.
I will go to that website, but I searched during the press conference, breakfast meeting, and I could not find it. Do you intend to have the meetings of the roundtable open to the public?
The meetings of the roundtable are the co-chairs are convening those meetings. Some of the meetings are going to be big public meetings, and some of them are one-on-one discussions or small group discussions.
I'm confused about your answer. Are the meetings of the roundtable going to be open to the public?
Some will be one-on-one that are not.
Will the meetings of the roundtable be posted on the website?
We will update all of the meetings information for the public on the website.
For the public?
Yes.
And you will determine what the public is?
What are public meetings? Yes. Yes, sir.
Mayor Bowser, this question is in regards to the dialogue that you and Councilmember McDuffie had. So earlier you said you wanted to maintain a balance in terms of economic development and equity.
Yes.
But, at what point, and going back to the op-ed that your predecessor, or one of your predecessors wrote, at what point do people, sort of face reality in terms of just what some people might describe the inability to strike that balance? Even with downtown being developed, there are some people who might not be able to afford certain amenities as far as going to the theater or going to certain places. Even right now, with Waterfront, Gallery Place, and other parts of DC, just even finding parking and paying for parking is even hard. So if you can just, speak to that with the reality that that's before us, as far as really making this whole process inclusive and coming out with something that, even though we're focused on tourism, we're not really leaving DC residents behind, because it is a very, very big concern among DC residents, particularly those who are struggling, generational DC residents who are struggling to stay in the city.
I think I understand can you just, okay.
You mentioned balance.
Yes.
You talked about balance, but there are people who will argue that you cannot strike balance when you talk about tourism and you prioritize people coming outside of the city and feeling comfortable here, when people who are inside the city are still struggling to get to and from, rob Peter to pay Paul, and enjoy the amenities in DC. How do you plan to rectify that as mayor for this plan?
Well, mayors have been doing it every day of mayoring, because that's the job. The job is to make sure that we have a strong economy in this city that is fair and allows people it gives them a fair shot, helps them earn a good wage, help them have access to great schools and a good paying job. And that's the system that we create here. We're very proud of the investments that we've made in my administration, with historic investments in public schools, including giving people the opportunities to earn a living while they're studying. We are very proud of our DC Infrastructure Academy, for example, that trains DC residents for good paying infrastructure jobs, and they're actually jobs at the end. We're very proud that we were among the first major cities to make sure that we had a $15 minimum wage that indexes with inflation, so people in DC can earn a good job. We're very proud that we have per capita invested more in affordable housing over the last 10 years than any place in America. So we have the building blocks, what we call, for giving people a pathway to the middle class and building a fair shot for them in our city. But all of those things that I just mentioned cost money. And the reason why we have, in many cases, the gold standard of investment in human services is because we have also increased the value of our commercial property downtown. I asked Kevin to do a 10-year look back. About 10 years ago, 9 years ago, the commercial property in the downtown was worth $75 billion. Today it's worth over $100 billion. And we assess taxes on those values that allow us to make historic investments in the amenities that attract people to DC and keep people in DC. So the 5-year economic development strategy has two of its main pillars are focused on Black Washingtonians, how we build more Black businesses and how we raise the median household income for Black Washingtonians. So anything more that you want to learn about our approach is in the 5-year economic development strategy or the comeback plan. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So I've spoken to a few council members and their staff, and they said that they would like to keep negotiating with Monumental if the Caps and Wizards leave. Do you agree with that? That's my first question. I have a second one.
Do I agree that we should
still
keep our $500 million on the table? Yes. That's why I advanced a piece of legislation to them.
Even if the Caps and Wiz, like if Monumental decides to pull them, do you want to continue to negotiate with them about something different? I believe at a previous press conference when you announced the task force, you said it didn't sound like you were willing to continue to negotiate if the Capitals and Wizards weren't the tenants.
Oh, I got it. I understand your question. Their lease requires the Capitals and Wizards to play at Capital One Arena.
Right, but would you be willing to renegotiate the lease as some council members would like?
With the Capitals and the Wizards?
Without them?
No.
No, there's not.
I'm not sure. What are the council members saying they would want?
I mean, Monumental suggested an arena, right? Like an entertainment video, something else. Like,
Oh,
just saying,
let
do
me
not
say,
close the door on Monumental.
no, we haven't closed the door on Monumental. I think having $500 million on the table indicates how wide the door is open. But if the suggestion is that Monumental would run a new entertainment and sports arena in Virginia and an entertainment and sports arena in downtown Washington, well, that just doesn't make sense. Because what would happen is this market can support so many special events. All the promoters will tell you that. And district residents would not accept premier entertainment events going to their new location and the non-premier events being at our location. What it would render the facility is underutilized. And so what the task force is tasked with is making sure that it is a bold, big vision, not like a limping along old arena. We own the land beneath the arena. We also have a lease that requires the teams to play there. And so all options, as Councilmember Fruman mentioned, are on the table for what the next iteration of Gallery Place is should the teams leave.
My second question is, I've spoken to several tenants here, new and old, and they told me these are like AAPI-owned businesses. They want to create a real Chinatown, one that isn't just Chinese characters underneath Clyde's. I wonder what you think of that. They suggested to me like an Asian market. I know that's what Chef Kevin Tien and I have spoken about, and that he had one at the Wharf. But he told me about it. Now a bunch of other chefs are telling me about this vision for an Asian market. What do you guys think about that?
I like it. But I think the part of what I want to say is that since this conversation has opened up, a lot of really great ideas have come forward. A lot. And so that's part of what will be considered in the public realm, on these acres that the arena sits on currently. All of those ideas should be on the table, so there's a mix of vibrant uses. Okay, I'll take a couple more here and right behind you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so a lot of attention has been paid towards revitalizing downtown in the weeks since Monumental's announcement. I'm just wondering if that same amount of attention was paid months in advance or months prior, Monumental would have never looked towards Virginia in the first place.
No, we have been, and I don't know if you've been following the DC Action Plan that we announced, I don't know, almost a year ago, where we've had convenings about the various nodes, including this one in the downtown that need investment, including on housing. So you may be just paying attention to that, but we've been paying attention to it for quite some time. I don't want to suggest that the opportunity here in this planning area is significant. This opportunity, the FBI opportunity that will be coming along, really represents some great opportunities for new development, more residents, and more opportunity for district residents. Yes, sir.
Mayor, you mentioned earlier there's already work going into keeping this area safe and clean. Can we detail what that looks like? And because it's going to be a priority for the month of February, I think for residents and tourists.
Keeping it safe and clean. So let me just say a little bit about how the task force's work is proceeding. They have a subgroup that's focused on activation. One of our big concerns with federal workers and other workers and remote work is just fewer people on non-event days. So a big focus will be activation. You heard already from one of your colleagues some ideas that are coming out, like how can we better use the public space so that we're bringing people to the area outside of event days that support the small businesses who are in and around here. The chief of police has always and continues to be focused on Monumental. Monumental gets extra attention around this arena to help with traffic and to help with all the people who are here that move in and out before and after games. This destination supports 20,000 people because of the metro lines, because people can walk easily to parking options, and because there are existing restaurants in place where some people just kind of mill around and eat before they start their way back home. So we are supporting those efforts. I talked about an additional tool that I think, depending on what the data show, could be deployed in Chinatown, and we will continue to work with the police chief on more of that. Councilmember Pinto, I think, included in the last budget a secure corridor, safe commercial corridors grant that the deputy mayor's office is responsible for implementing. So that's a new infusion of funds that will be out there, and we'll have more to say about safe commercial corridors in the future.
Just to follow up, does it mean like clearing up some of the loitering that's going around in the area, or obviously I know you're pushing that in the omnibus legislation. But is that what it also looks like when you say safe and secure? I'm just trying to gauge it for the person that's going to come.
Well,
here and say,
I want to be clear. People can stand on the street. Okay. Even they can stand on the street. You can't commit crimes on the street. And we considered this. You could go in a neighborhood in D.C. and they want to talk about loitering, and the Deputy Mayor Pia and her team have been very careful to advance a piece of legislation that we think holds up, has been in the district, and can address criminal loitering. Yes.
Mayor, thank you for inviting us to be here today. I know that this is just in the beginning stages, but with everybody, wanting to be negative about parking, crime, this, that, how do you get people excited? Because I know it's a long-term plan, but how do you get people excited about what you guys are trying to do here?
I think people are very excited, and part of it's kind of limbo, right? Because we love our teams, we have a deal on the table, and they haven't walked away from it. Let me be clear. What Monumental says is we haven't signed anything. We haven't walked away from the district. So that's why you hear people talking with some limbo. Now, at the same time, we feel pretty confident about what we have. We have 5 acres of prime real estate in Washington, D.C., and there's only one Washington, D.C. So we think that we're going to be great either way, but we also know that this is Washington, and Washington's team should play in Washington. I'll take a couple more. Yeah.
Okay. This is a follow-up on an earlier question. The city administrator mentioned that we have some of the lowest prosecution rates in the country. Have you asked the U.S. Attorney Graves why that is? And do you think that raising those rates will help with crime in DC?
Well, what we know and what the city administrator just beautifully communicated is that in the last 10 years, there have been lots of changes to the system that makes up our criminal justice system in the district. And that's the point that we like to make. We don't know all the reasons why, but we point to a time when we had higher prosecutions, more police officers, higher closure rate, and we had fewer homicides. And so there are a lot of inputs, so we can't draw direct correlations with all of those things, but we are setting the table for how we need to reset the system. All right, last two. Yes.
Mayor, yes. Just to follow up on that note, when you talk about resetting the system and an understanding that this is a complex ecosystem with many different jurisdictions involved, but I want to know what you see as far as what is within your power and your purview when you're reviewing this, what has gone wrong, what you need to change, what you take responsibility for.
I take responsibility for public safety in the District of Columbia, period. Whether I'm responsible for the actual initiatives or not. I'm the mayor, and it's my responsibility to work with all of our partners to make the district safer. So I take responsibility for all of it.
Can you be a little more specific on like what you have reviewed that you believe needs to change within the executive?
We think a lot of things need to change. We think, for example, that we need to have greater prosecution of juveniles. We have seen our kids become more violent at younger ages and have less accountability. So we think that needs to change. We think we need more police officers. So we're working very hard on recruiting officers, retaining officers, and best deploying our officers in ways that we need. We think that we need more prosecutors, and I'm very grateful that the DOJ has sent those prosecutors to us. And we also need to change some of our laws, and we're working hard to do that. We had some discussion around DFS, and we want DFS fully operational, but we want it operational in a sustainable way. And we want to be able to recruit. And this is the other thing that we continue to focus on, the right people for all of these positions. One that we are recruiting for as we speak is director of our ONES office. And everybody who is interested in alternatives to policing and keeping communities safe and is willing to work across the government, call us, because we're looking for that hire. Yep.
As far as safe and clean, what's the engagement with DBH around that as far as engaging drug users?
DBH will be actively involved, and as I said, we will have a little bit more to say about safe commercial corridors and how we're deploying them to include DBH. All right. Yes, last one.
Thanks. I've been talking to sort of store owners, restaurant managers around the neighborhood, and the consistent narrative they've been saying is that things weren't going great before the Caps Wizards made their announcement, before the deal. Like, things have been sliding backwards in terms of crime, public safety, the comfort level of their staff and their clientele. One person I talked to said we're already on life support. This would pull the plug. Now, this is obviously a long-term vision. You're coming together here. So what short-term assurances can you offer to local business owners, restaurant managers, patrons? Because folks are kind of freaking out.
Well, so I'm going to answer your question, but I also want to give you some context. It was just announced that DC had the most restaurant openings per capita of any major city in America. So I appreciate the restaurant owners that you spoke to, but you can also speak to a lot more who are making decisions about opening. I was with a restaurant entrepreneur yesterday who's at 6 and is continuing to invest in new openings in Washington, D.C. So it's simply not true that restaurants aren't opening or thriving in Washington. Now, they have some hurdles, like we've thrown some things at them, including changes in the way that they pay workers. So there's some changes that they're contending with as well. So part of the immediate stabilization that Deputy Mayor and her team have made are deploying grants. We were just yesterday talking about grants, and I'm going to ask Nina to say a little bit more about that grant opportunity that opens on February 5th. That's next week, where businesses can qualify for immediate grants to support their downtown businesses. All right. Thank you, everybody.